Blackhawks can't stem a comeback versus Columbus. They fall 4-2 is the final. Now, this game started off decently. Columbus got on the board first with Charlie Coyle, who scored his first goal of the game. He ended up with 3 and a hat trick in this one, but the Blackhawks responded quickly after, and it was Connor Bedard getting his second goal of this back-to-back sequence here. He scored last night. He scores again today. This one, he was out in front of the net, put home a rebound near the end of the first period, and we went into the first intermission 1-1. I believe that was the case last night too, and then to come out in this second period versus the Blue Jackets, it looked like we were trending towards kind of another meltdown like last night, where the Columbus really controlled pressure for a majority of the second period, especially the first 10 or so minutes. Columbus was really pressuring. They built, I think it was a 2-1 lead, maybe got to 3-1 at some points, but the Blackhawks then, to their credit, kind of pushed back later in the period. 3-1 Jackets with 9 minutes 11 seconds left in the second, but then Bedard picked up his second point of the game as he fed Frank Nazar, who finally got on the board. For Nazar, it's been kind of a long time coming. It was his first goal since returning for injuries, so he'd been scoreless for 5 games since returning, but then he got on the board off that nice feed from Bedard, who picked up points on the 2 Blackhawks goals in this one, and that really kind of sparked the team, especially that top line with Bedard, Nazar, and Bertuzzi. They really had pressure. The following shift after that second period goal, they had a dominant ozone shift, and then there were flashes throughout the third period when the Blackhawks were trying to stem a little comeback down 1 goal, where that top line again just had constant pressure in the ozone. That was evident on the power play, where all 3 of those guys are on PP1, so the power play was rolling really well in this one as well. They didn't score. They haven't been able to snap that, I think, now 0 for 26 drought, but they were pressuring on their chances. It looks like they're doing everything but scoring. So shout out to Connor and Frank. They had great games in this one. They generated a lot of offense. Connor even had a golden opportunity with like 2 minutes left in the game, but he had like a wide open cage. He just needed to put the puck in the net, and he shot it just high. It was a little bit of a difficult shot. He had to catch it with his left skate, kick it to his forehand, and then be able to put the puck in the net, and he just roofed it high in the process. But I know he's going to be a little bit frustrated he missed that one, but those two were, him and Frank, were really, really good in this one. At the end of the day, though, wasn't quite enough, as the Jackets put an empty netter in with about a minute left. It was Charlie Coyle. He finished his hat trick off with a late empty net goal, and yeah, the Jackets were able to come out with the win. The Blackhawks will see Columbus in just a few days. I think next Wednesday they play again, so that'll be a pretty good matchup. I thought this game was actually pretty entertaining. It was pretty back and forth. I think I got to credit Columbus. I think they played a solid game, but the Blackhawks definitely had their fair share of chances in this one. It was a pretty back and forth game. I do want to dive a little bit into the lines heading into this game, particularly the forward lines. I'll talk about the D lines or the D pairings after, but the first line was switched a little bit. Now the whole lines were jumbled just a bit because Nick Foligno missed this game with an undisclosed injury. There's been some speculation it might be a re-aggravation of a hand injury of some sort that's kind of been nagging him over the past week or so, or maybe not, maybe it's something else. We're not really sure. He left last night's game in Pittsburgh in the first period pretty early on and did not return then. We haven't really gotten an update on what's going on with Foligno. We just kind of know he's day-to-day right now. So the forward lines were a little bit jumbled, but I almost think Blashill did too much. Now, Donato got moved up from the 4th line to the 3rd line to play with Dickinson and Mikheyev, which means Bertuzzi got bumped up into the top 6, but Blashill decided to put Bertuzzi on the top line with Nazar and Bedard, and then moved Teravainen to play with Green and Burakovsky. Now, in the process of that, Oliver Moore got dropped to the 4th line in this one. So what the line ended up being were Nazar, Bedard, Bertuzzi on the top line, Teravainen, Green, Burakovsky on the 2nd line, Donato, Dickinson, Mikheyev, and then Slaggert, Moore, and Lafferty. Now, that 4th line really didn't play at all in this game. I don't really like moving down Oliver Moore. I didn't think he had a good game last night in Pittsburgh. It was probably his worst since he's been playing center kind of full time, but I don't really get dropping him down in the 4th line. He played only 8 minutes and 48 seconds in this one, so I don't really get that. And then touching on the top line, I just don't really get why you move Teravainen off that line. The 2 games that top line's been together, I thought they've played really well. To me, also watching some of Connor's media, Connor Bedard's media availabilities when they were adjusting to that new line. It kind of seemed like Bedard wanted to play with Teravainen. It came off to me that he was a little bit frustrated that he didn't play with Teuvo more last season. So I don't really like them switching off it that fast. Now that top line was pretty good in this game, but that might just be because Frank Nazar and Connor Bedard work so well together. So I didn't love that, but ultimately I guess it's fine. I think probably the biggest issue is just moving more down to the fourth line. Burakovsky has been in a really, really rough stretch. This has probably been the worst hockey he's played in a Blackhawks uniform over the past 2 weeks or so. So I'd be fine bumping him down a little bit in the lineup or some sorts, maybe even running 11 and 7 a little bit and potentially getting like guys like Moore, even if you're not going to play him in a top 6 role necessarily, you can get him potentially a little bit more ice time if you mix and match the lines a little bit. I don't know how exactly it would work, but those were my comments. I just wanted to comment on those forward lines, but it kind of brings me into the back end here where the big storyline heading into this game was Sam Rinzel back into the Blackhawks lineup, Artem Levchinov into the press box. Now, the Blackhawks called up Sam Rinzel like officially this morning. I think it was last night. It was posted on the AHL transaction log, and it comes all at a time where Artem Levchinov's really struggling. These past few games have not been his best, and it kind of boiled over last night in Pittsburgh, where that was pretty much a disaster for Artie. I don't think all the goals that he was on the ice for, which was 5, I don't think they were all his fault, but it certainly wasn't a great game from him. Now, Blashill basically said when he was asked about it, he's going to healthy scratch Levchinov here. Potentially, the following 2 games before the Olympic break, potentially he gets into a game. We'll see what happens, but it's in order to reset some of the foundational aspects of his game. They brought back up Rinzel, who actually I thought played pretty well tonight. He wasn't doing anything necessarily super flashy, but I thought he had a really solid game. He led Blackhawks in ice time over 22 minutes in this one, and I just thought his game was calm. He looked comfortable at this level, which it may take. I was kind of expecting potentially a few games of adjustment coming back up from the AHL. It's definitely a different speed, but he looked like he just looked settled in. He looked really composed, and he got top minutes in this game. But with Levchinov, I don't love keeping him in the press box, but I don't hate it. I think the foundational aspects, I've seen a lot of Blackhawks fans kind of commenting on that and almost freaking out about that. To me, that's not too big of a deal. I think it's just kind of a reason to put Levchinov in the press box. You kind of have to say something. You're not just going to say you're scratching him. It would probably sound worse, but I'm not freaking out about it. I don't think it's a terrible thing to have him watching a few games. Now, personally, I think I would have just had him play out these following, or I guess it would have been 3 games this morning. Now it's 2 games. I would have just had him play out these games heading into the Olympic break and use that as kind of the reset. That's what I don't quite understand. We're like less than a week until the Olympic break, and now we're kind of giving him an extra reset. Doesn't make a ton of sense to me there, but I don't hate watching a few games from the press box. I don't think that's anything to freak out about. I don't know if it's necessarily an indication. I mean, certainly a little bit his poor play playing a factor in this decision, but I don't think it's also just a worse thing in general for him to watch a few games. I think the best example of this was a few years ago in Anaheim where Leo Carlsson for the Ducks, he watched the majority, or not a majority, but he had a fair share of games watching in the press box throughout his rookie season, and the Ducks were kind of able to ease him in. Now, this might be a little bit of a different situation than that because Artie's poor plays probably a little bit of an influence on this decision, but just kind of an example that goes to show it's not the end of the world if a prospect or rookie is watching a few games in the press box. It's nothing to freak out about. My opinion really on the Levchinov thing right now is that sure, this is a rough stretch, but there's going to be rough stretches throughout his first season, probably his first few seasons. He's a 20-year-old defenseman. There's not a ton of 20-year-old defensemen around the NHL that are playing big minutes, and especially with Levchinov, there's a few extra things that you have to put into consideration. It's not like I'm not freaking out about this, especially we've seen some really good stretches throughout this season with Artie. I think that's something that people can be a little bit overreactionary on just a few games. They can overreact in a bad stretch or so, but it's important to look at the season as a whole, and I think this has been a pretty okay season for Levchinov. We've seen some stretches where he looks so good. So to me, not freaking out about a bad patch watch here, and I'm not totally concerned with him watching a few games in the press box, so it just comes at a weird time. So those are kind of my brief thoughts on Levchinov, kind of the whole Levchinov situation right now. And on the positive end, I thought Sam Rinzel played a real solid game. Nice for him to get some good minutes in this one because Connor Murphy's probably going to be gone come deadline time, and then Rinzel's going to have to play a decent amount, so at least you're kind of getting him eased back in now, even though he played 22 minutes in this game, so it wasn't much of an ease back in. But we'll see at practice this weekend what they plan to do. I'm going to watch closely for Levchinov, see how they work with him. It sounds like they want to do some more one-on-one coaching with Artie, so I'll be paying close attention to that. I've seen him over the past few weeks staying on the ice after practice, working specifically on his shot. He's working on shooting with a little more deception from different angles, working on a toe drag release. They're developing that with him. It's a work in progress, but I have been staying after practice last few weeks and watching that develop. So that's a positive sign. We'll see this weekend how they work with him and if he is going to be on track to be back in the lineup. If there's any important updates, I'll be sure to jump on here, make a video about it. But if not, the next Blackhawks game is going to be a kind of big one. They play the San Jose Sharks at the United Center on Monday. Before I do wrap up this video, I got a little bit off track from this game versus Columbus, but I do want to go through a few of the takeaways over on Twitter at Blackhawks Focus. Like always, first one says Nazar, Bedard, Bertuzzi needs to be the first line for the rest of the season. I would definitely agree that Nazar and Bedard need to be kept together for sure. I guess Bertuzzi's he's decent. He's good on that line. I liked when Teravainen was playing on that line, but Bertuzzi does add a little bit more of a presence on the walls, kind of like a physical presence. Not that he's throwing big hits or anything, but just on the walls and in the net, in front of the net, he provides a different element that Tavo doesn't provide. But I did think Teravainen was working pretty good with that line. But as long as really we have Nazar and Bedard together, I'm pretty happy with that. And I think these last few games have showed they work really, really well together. No reason to take them off the line. They're really, really clicking right now. Keep Rinzel up, says this one. Yeah, I thought Rinzel had, like I've said, a really, really good game in this one. He just looked really composed. He wasn't necessarily doing anything flashy. Hopefully that will come as he gets a little bit comfortable, kind of getting back to this NHL level. But I thought his game looked really sound. He looked really calm and composed with the puck. There were a few times he was pressured or under high pressure in the D zone. He was able to spin off it, regroup. He broke up a few rushes from Blue Jackets coming in to the zone with speed. Rinzel used his stick. He poke checked a few, just broke up a few passes, a few rushes. So I thought he looked really nice in this game. And yeah, I do expect him to stay up even when Levchinov returns to the lineup. Connor Murphy's probably kind of got 1 foot out the door right now. He's going to be gone pretty soon, so it's going to open up a pretty big opportunity for both Rinzel and Levchinov really to carry heavy minutes, with Rinzel going to give him back to that full-time look in the NHL, and then with Levchinov, it's even going to put him, I expect, on the penalty kill, so that'll be kind of fun. I actually think that's kind of a talking point for another day. I don't want to dive all back into Artem Levchinov right now, but I will say I'm kind of excited to see Artie get more penalty kill minutes, because I actually think he can be a really good penalty killer. Thought they were buzzing until that final shift, but kind of fizzled out at the end. Yeah, they really had the Blackhawks had a strong push last really like 30 minutes of this game. The second half of this game was pretty much controlled by the Blackhawks, but credit to the Jackets. They played well enough defensively and in the neutral zone to keep the Blackhawks off the scoreboard and ultimately come home with the win. But the Blackhawks did pressure really well, especially that Connor Bedard line. Connor Bedard looked really, really good. Frank Nazar looked really, really good in this one, and they had a fair share of chances to tie this game, but ultimately just could not do it. Are they going to score on the PP? 3 of the last 5, the power play has lost us the game. So the Blackhawks had Sam Rinzel quarterbacking the first unit in this game. Matt Grzelcyk stayed quarterbacking the second unit, so that was a little bit of a switch with the power play, and I will say it looked really, really good in this game. Maybe it was because Rinzel, maybe it was just because Bedard and Nazar were really clicking this game, but either way, the power play generated a lot of chances in this game. It's just a matter of time before they snap this drought, but it is a tough skid, and yeah, the power play has kind of been, you kind of would like to get a power play goal here, and there's been some games where they need a goal. They're 1 goal away from really winning the game, and with the power play being in such a bad skid and you're getting nothing from or no goals from the power play. It is tough, and that is kind of a killer. It's like a great time for me to say again, let's get Wyatt Kaiser on that second power play unit. There's no reason not to have him. Hopefully, if Matt Grzelcyk gets moved at the trade deadline, that may open up a spot for him, though it'll probably be Levchinov and Rinzel quarterbacking the unit. Really hope the Hawks unload Burakovsky at the deadline. Played a pretty good game, but couldn't finish their chances. Yeah, Burakovsky's in a real rough stretch here. I don't think he's going to get moved at the deadline. He has another year on his contract. He's had a pretty decent cap hit, and no one watching him this past month really is going to have much trade interest in him. So I don't expect him to be moved, but it has been a tough stretch for him. Last one here from Evo Bill. Shout out Evo Bill, comments on a lot of the videos, so I appreciate that. But couple goals from important play, or 4 important players, but still not finishing enough. Need some of the scoring reinforcements on their way. Yeah, hopefully to start with just some of the guys in the middle six heat up a little bit, particularly Andre Burakovsky. And then also, not going to be too long before Anton Frendel is in this Blackhawks lineup, potentially Sasha Boisvert as well. So we'll see who's added here. Past the deadline, the lineup may look a little bit different, and hopefully can generate a little bit more secondary scoring outside of that top line. So that's going to do it for this one. Blackhawks fall to the Blue Jackets, but can get back at them next week. But first, Bedard versus Celebrini on Monday. That's going to be a real fun matchup. It'll be the next post-game recap coming from me. So I'll see you then.